Hi everyone, and welcome to another World's Prediction video, this time brought to you by the PCS English broadcast. I'm Reirachu, this is Nit3Star, and first off, Frank, who is winning Worlds? There's only two right answers, by the way.
Two right answers. I think there's only one. It's Frank Esports. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Frank Esports are winning Worlds. I told Clement that I would say it on video, and there we go. Clip it, ship it.
Maybe next year, maybe 2013, maybe World's 13th series of the World competition. But, you know, I was kind of hoping you would end up with one of these teams, this nice team that we've been waiting an entire year to see back at the World Championships. Of course, PCS, we've got to rep our two teams, right? CTBC Flying Oyster as well as Beyond Gaming. I cannot wait for their redemption arc. But first off, we're going to take a look at the play-ins, the play-in draw. We're gonna talk a bit about the analysis between these groups, Group A and Group B, and how these shape up. Of course, if you guys are watching this video, Beyond Gaming, of course, will have to start from the play-ins. They did come in second place in the PCS summer playoffs, so they will be playing from Mexico, whereas CFO are going to make it straight through groups. Of course, through our historic performance from the PCS, they won't need to play in play-ins, but yep, I'll run your screens there. It's a Group A, Fnatic, BYG, Dead FM, Evil Geniuses, Loud, as well as Chiefs, and this is where BYG has ended up in. What do we think about the way the groups have shaped up?
Certainly, when you factor in the fact that both the LCK and the LPL first seed are in Group B, I do think BYG definitely got out on the better end. Especially then you factor in the fact that, you know, there's Saigon Buffalo, there's Mad Lions, so it's pretty stacked over in Group B. Whereas on our end, while DFM, Loud, and Chiefs, you know, no disrespect to them, as they were victors of their region, it just doesn't feel like it's quite on the same caliber or same level as the Mad Lions or even a Saigon Buffalo.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we definitely did dodge a bullet right there, skipping out the 4 seeds from both LCK as well as LPL and RNG and DRX. I think Group B seems as if like there's a pretty clear cut top 2 that will come out of Group B, whereas in Group A, you know, we've got the 2 pool 1 seeds, Fnatic and of course BYG, but then it seems as if like for the rest of the other 4 teams, like we're a lot more competitive, we're a lot closer in level. I think when you look at like a Group A, if BYG can't take a couple of games off of DFM, EG, Loud, and Chiefs, then I mean, then we don't really deserve to be here, right? I think we're going in for like a very exciting matchups like all around in Group A.
Yeah, the only struggle with Group A is if you don't make top 2, if you don't get top 2, then you will most likely play against a DRX or an RNG in the bracket stage. So if you don't get at least second and secure the top seed in the bracket portion of the play-in stage, then it does become pretty difficult. So yeah, it really just comes down to BYG making sure they sort of exceed everyone else's expectations and really rise to the occasion. I think this is the squad who has showcased that they are able to develop, and if they continue to develop since the finals of PCS, this team can certainly grab that second seed and make a run to get into the group stage.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that BYG, kind of a bit more so than CFO, just because when you factor in when BCS summer playoffs ended up until when either of these teams have to go for Worlds, because Mexico, I mean, we're filming this, it's like the 22nd right now, like they fly in pretty much like a week or so, and they've only had like a few weeks to really like make sure everything is prepped ready for Worlds. And I think, as you were saying, it's pretty much the mostly the same roster from last year. Of course, we don't have Doggo, but we do have Wacko, who was putting on great performances, especially towards the end of summer playoffs. Really like came into his own as that carry ADC. BYG were able to like play around him or play around Lee Kai over in the top side, jungle at mid stepping up too. So I think that we do have a shot in Group A, but then when you look at some of the other teams in our group, right, we've got Loud. I mean, CBLO, traditionally they play a very fast and furious style as well. I'm not sure just how BYG can cope with that, because in the past, BYG kind of played a more like slower type of style, like farming towards late game, that sort of thing. So I'm not sure how much they're able to switch things up depending on a different pace that the other teams might show them. We saw BYG like starting to learn to play different types of play styles in the 3 weeks of PCS summer playoffs. Like we saw them try to carry through top, we saw them play a bit more towards like early mid game here and there, but just how well are they able to do this at Worlds, we're not too sure.
Yeah, in general, most of these teams do feel like they play more of fast-paced game. Perhaps EG will go for more scaling drafts. And maybe that's like the only other team that's looking to try and play a little bit slower. But for the most part, a lot of these teams do like to be aggressive. So we'll see how BYG does try and handle it. As I would even say, for the most part, PCS in general was probably one of the more slow paced regions. When you look at PSG, CFO, BYG, even DCG was a little bit slower paced. So this is definitely a lot different coming in to Mexico City.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the kind of thing that you see in play-ins all the time, right? Like nothing is ever certain. I mean, we saw like LGL, I think they had that like win over C9 as well, which was super hype in the past at Worlds. And then the thing is, I think for play-ins, you have a lot of these minor region teams who are the first in their region, and I think in a couple of regions around the world also, because the regions are so kind of top heavy, where you have like one dominant team over at the top. It kind of encourages like the best team in their region to just kind of play however they like, which is why when you see them come to Worlds, you see them play in play-ins, you just can't really predict as well what they're going to do. So I think that will be very interesting to see, but I do think that BYG have a shot at making it out of Group A. You know what? I'm gonna say it. BYG makes it out of Group A. Come on. I mean, I'm wearing the jersey, man. I'm ready.
So you're gonna call them the first seed? Is that what you're saying here?
No. Maybe the second seed. We'll go with that. We'll go with the second seed.
Okay. All right.
That's going to be tough. I know that's going to be tough, because potentially then they're going to have to play either DRX or RNG. But we're also assuming, that DRX and RNG are sailing out of Group B into play-ins, but you never know. I mean, historically also a couple of the teams, the orgs in Group B, like you don't really quite want to count them out either. I mean, Saigon Buffaloes, we're filming on the 22nd, right? So I think like 2 hours ago, like the latest update was 4 of their roster have gotten their visas. So I think they're still just waiting on 1 visa for their player, and then I think 1 of either their coaches or their manager. But their roster, most of their roster, I mean, the team is going, just whether or not they have all 5, but they're finally getting most of the team there. So I don't know, like if they're gonna have like a sub situation or anything. And also, of course, there's that criticism about, for example, Mad Lions, about how they're making it to play-in stages. They made it to Worlds without having to win a best of 5 series, but yet here they are. There was a couple of videos. There was like Dylan B and a couple of like other people who are making comments about that as well. So, we're not sure. We're not sure if it's going to be DRX or RNG. They're just sailing their way to groups. There's also some possibility for an upset.
Yeah, certainly for Group B, one of the major regions will not be making it through. Or it will be very difficult for them. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how it turns out. Um, but when you're talking about predictions, I think for Group A, um, I think EG maybe gets out as first seed. It's really close, honestly. Fnatic,
Mm-hmm.
of course, most stability on the roster, but did look pretty bad towards the end of their playoff run. So I'm willing to just go ahead on record. BYG get out first in this group. I'm going to change my mind. It's BYG first, EG second, and for Group B, I'm saying RNG first, DRX second.
Whew. So I agree with you. I think RNG are gonna make it out first, DRX in second seed for Group B. Group A, though, I kind of still want to go with Fnatic and then BYG. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that.
All right, the BYG wearing jersey wear is taking BYG second. So at the very least, they have a good chance of making it into the group stage. But I think we really should take a look now at that group stage, as it should be pretty interesting. I mean, it's probably one of the most competitive group stages that we've had. It feels like all of these groups are really, really tough to get out of. So
yeah, I mean,
could...
there's a whole bunch of discussion, right, about the way that the group draw works. Of course, every year there's always like, you only see 3 out of the 4 teams first, and some groups I think look easier than others before you factor in whoever might come in from play-ins. But we're just going to take a look at the 3 teams that ended up in each group first. Group A, of course, we've got C9, T1, and EDG, and you just cannot tell me that this is not scripted. I mean, how many years has it been where C9 ends up with T1 and EDG, or T1 and EDG end up together, and then they're like opening match of the entire Worlds, and at some point C9 wins a game off of one of them, and it's super hype. I mean, did I see this last year? Did I see this a few years ago? I feel like this happens every year, Frank.
The draw definitely feels a little bit scripted. Not gonna lie. T1, EDG, C9. This is a group of the ages. A classic, an absolute classic. And I will say the returning champs, of course, EDG, they still look in pretty strong form. T1, of course, really hard streaking until the end of summer. Then they hit a bit of a hiccup there as they really struggled to overcome Gen G. Gen G's a completely different beast, of course. But C9 themselves made an absolute spectacular run through the playoffs as they managed to win the LCS from out of nowhere, it feels like. This was a squad that everyone sort of counted out, maybe a dark horse to upset a team, but certainly not to finish first at the very end. So I love how Group A shapes up. It should be super duper competitive, and we are going to have one of the LEC teams slot in there. So it will be either Mad Lions or Fnatic. So both of those teams, depending on how play-in stage goes for them, could also look to become really, really competitive here.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, also, I mean, if Fnatic or like Mad Lions ends up in Group A, the T1 Fnatic, T1 Mad Lions, or EDG Fnatic or Mad Lions is also really historically hype matchup too. And I know that like for T1 especially, right, that they got a lot of flack online from fans because they were saying like, oh, T1, they're in a slump again. And I think that every time Worlds comes around or international competition comes around, like MSI. People always have this criticism of T1, but I just don't quite understand it. I think that what people are really doing are just kind of comparing T1 to like former T1 or like the peak of T1. I mean, T1 are not a bad team. I feel as if like when T1 like drop games or they drop a series, they suddenly like panic, being like, oh, T1 is gonna like top 6 at World's Tops, that sort of thing. And I mean, like last year, for example, T1 came into Worlds like not the favorite. I mean, of course they didn't win, but once they started their Worlds run, I think that like for organizations such as T1 and EDG, you just can't count them out. I think that for Group A, despite how good of a run that C9 had, I think they 3-0'd 100T in NA during their finals. I think they 3-0'd them twice. I think 100T had played them again also, and it was like 2 3-0s. And they ended up with LCS first seed, and then their prize for that apparently is ending up in the same group as T1 EDG. So I don't know how big brain 100T were, where they're like, you know what? We don't want first seed. We're going to end up in the group with Genji and CFO, but I think that it did work out for 100T. I think my pick for Group A, regardless of which LEC team comes in fourth, I think that T1 and EDG are going to make it out.
Yeah, T1 and EDG should be the expectations. That being said, C9 have consistently overcome expectations, especially
That's true.
when you look at the NA representatives. Constantly, time and time again, C9 are the ones to buck the trend of not making out of groups and be the NA team that does. So I think C9 can certainly overcome, and that means one of these teams in T1 or EDG will also have to drop out. And I think EDG, it's definitely a very close comparison between EDG and T1. And I think for the most part, I'm going to predict EDG and C9. I think T1 will get edged out ever so slightly, whether it's in a tiebreak scenario or they come 3-3 and don't make the cut to a double 4-2 record coming in from C9 EDG.
So if you gotta pick, which are the two that are making it out of Group A?
EDG, C9. T1. See, I think the criticism on T1 is a little bit overblown because we are comparing them to like T1 of the past, where LCK was light years ahead of everyone else in the world, and certainly it's just not the case anymore. The gap has certainly closed in that regard, and also they're just not the number one region. So LPL is just it's hard to not pick LPL seeds because of how taxing their playoffs run is, or just to make it to Worlds.
Yeah, I mean, I still think T1 and EDG will make it out of Group A, but I also actually think that there's an outside chance that EDG don't make it, and then it ends up something like T1 Fnatic or T1 and Mad that make it out of Group A instead, just because I still have PTSD from in the past where expectations were high on the EDG squad and then they didn't make it out of groups. So that still haunts me. And the thing is, like, for the EDG roster, most of the roster has remained consistent over the years. So I don't know if it's the PTSD talking, but I kind of see that there's like an outside chance where that might happen too. Do you want to move on to Group B right now, where we've got JDG, LPL's first seed, G2, LEC second seed, as well as the third seed from the LCK, Damwon Kia. What do you think?
Yeah, yet another competitive group. I think it's very similar to Group A. The last team that will slot in here, it could be something like an EG going into this spot. Yeah,
maybe DRX also could end up in Group B, which would make things a bit spicy.
DRX wouldn't overlap with Damwon.
Oh yeah, you're right. DK is in there already.
So it would pretty much be EG, I think, or if any of the upset potential comes through, that would also be a candidate to slot into this group. So for this group, I think Jingdong should have pretty much a firm grasp on the first seed, just because of how strong of a form their playoff run was through the LPL playoffs. And then it really is a toss-up between G2 and Damwon Kia, because Damwon Kia, in general, their season was really shaky by their standards. Still a very good team, but then G2 themselves, they also sort of got kicked to the curb in their finals. So form-wise, we'll see how that turns out. But I think Jingdong are relatively comfortable in this group coming out, even though it's a pretty competitive one. I think they'll come out 5-1 or even a 6-0.
Yeah, I think that historically, 5-1 and 6-0 is very close, right? Because a lot of the teams that people just expect to just smash their way through groups and go 6-0, like they just somehow during week 2, like towards the end of week 2, when like their ticket is already through into quarters, they just drop a game here and there. I feel like the 5-1 and 6-0 is pretty much the same capability in terms of the team, is really just how much strats do the teams want to show at the end of groups. I completely agree with you about Jingdong. I think that the end of LPL summer and like their run also was just phenomenal. I think they were just like speed running their way through the league. I think a lot of LPL fans are for sure expecting JDG to do very well in Group B. I think if we think of Group A as like the hell group, and we think of Group D as not like the free group exactly, because we're there, the group of life. Yes. I'm gonna go with Group D being Group of Life this year. I think that Group B instead is the group where the second, third, and fourth teams are probably going to be pretty evenly matched, and it's a lot harder to predict which is going to be the second team coming out of Group B.
Yeah, Group B will be interesting. If Jingdong does come out in a 6-0 fashion, it could also mean like maybe there's a surprise coming out from the play-in stage and we end up with a 3-way tie in a 2-4 situation. Group B, that would be really cool. We did have that last year with Group A. Damwon Kia came out 6-0, and then Cloud9, Rogue, and FPX all came out as 2-4 and had to play tie-break their way out of it. And Group A seems very similar, or our current Group A seems very similar to last year's Group D, where it was a 3-way, 3-3 tie, so or 4-way. So that would be really fun. Overall, I would pick Jingdong, and for a second seed, I'll give it to G2. I think Damwon Kia they still have that question up in the top lane. They still have shot calling issues. I don't know if that will be resolved in the month since their playoff run, that it gets fixed.
They don't need to fix it completely. They just need to be better than G2 to make it out. I'm gonna go with JDG and DK, I think, making it out of Group B for me.
All right. There we go. Let's move on to Group C then. Group C also, I feel like there's a pretty good chance we could see a lot of surprises, right? Because Rogue came out as the first seed from LEC. However, Rogue as an organization have struggled on the world stage. Then you look at top esports, a ton of firepower in this lineup, but they are also known to throw in some odd endings to their games where it seems like the games are absolutely locked in, and then they fumble the last couple of fights, and then their Nexus explodes out of nowhere. So this is going to be a very volatile group in my opinion, and this could also be a group of life because of whichever team does slot in. You're looking at Gigabyte Marines, also pretty competitive but also volatile. So this is a group of volatility.
Yeah, I agree. If you're talking about Group B as the type of group that ends up with a lot of tiebreakers, analytically, I think the analyst probably like looking at Group B matches the most, where they're like, oh, it's more even. We just want to see like two evenly matched teams duke it out. But for me, I think as like, you know, a viewer, as an audience, as a fan, Group C is just where it's at. Like, I love watching teams like GAM every year. Like, do I think that GAM is going to make it out of groups? No, but I think that GAM is going to be here to win games, like a few games here and there. So I'm just absolutely here for it. I think at the end of the day, it will probably be Rogue as well as Top Esports who will make it out of Group C, but I am still pretty excited to watch Gigabyte Marines. I mean, I gotta rep the Southeast Asia like every single year. I mean, I'm excited to watch like Saigon Buffaloes and GAM play.
Yeah, so if DRX do come out of the play-in stage, they would slot into this particular group. So then you're looking at Rogue, Top Esports, Gigabyte Marines, and DRX. All of these teams feel fairly coin flippy. They love to play a lot of early aggression into trying to flip for objectives. So in that regard, really any of these teams, I think, can come out of the group. So I definitely pegged this one as the group of life, because really anyone can come out top two. Whereas Group D does feel like it's Gen G and then everyone else. So Group C, if I had to pick which two teams, I'll say Top Esports. Top Esports is going to be a team that either come first in this group or they're going to come fourth. I don't think they're going to come second or third.
Yikes. They could come third. Come on. There's GAM in this group.
Yeah, this is a team that is just really the first or fourth squad. They're either going to just straight up pound everyone into the dirt, or they're just going to flip their way into fourth place. Definitely see them possibly coming out as that 2-4 FPX team last year, where they really started out slow and took too long to get online. I think I will still pick Top Esports to get out of the group. My second pick, oh man, it is tough. I'm gonna go for Rogue here.
Yeah, now that you talk about DRX, if they make it out of play-ins, and we do have
Def's last
DRX. Yeah, oh my god. I've been watching League for too long, man. I still remember when he was on Samsung and when they lost matches, even to their sister squad, when it was a vintage Samsung White versus Samsung Blue, and when Def lost to like Imp, he would still cry in the player booth before coming out. Like, I've been watching League for way too long. I mean, Dev's grown up now. He's close to retirement, but I mean, he's still an absolutely phenomenal AD carry. But now that you mentioned that DRX will be slotting into Group C, and we predicted DRX to make it out of groups, I think it'd be interesting, because when we brought up GAM just now and how GAM historically always ends up taking a few games here and there off of the higher ranked teams in their group, I don't think that GAM's coin flippy playstyle will be able to take a game off of DRX. So I absolutely agree with you. I think that GAM, TES, and Rogue, like a lot of these games could be won off of a coin flip, but I don't think that GAM can win that way versus DRX. So I think I might go with TES and DRX actually making it out of Group C. But Rogue is, oh man.
Rogue is certainly a fan favorite team.
Yeah,
right?
And the thing is, because we've got Rogue and G2 in groups, right, from the LEC, and after recent events with G2, will I be rooting for them at Worlds? I kind of want Rogue to kind of be the LEC rep, you know, that makes it into quarters if I have to root for an LEC team, you know? And also, Rogue is a great team. I feel like Rogue needs to have more fans. I think that LEC, like, for the last like 1 or 2 years, because a lot of like the traditional star players that have been drawing eyeballs to the league have kind of like left to play in other leagues. I feel as if teams such as Rogue, who are strong, just don't get enough recognition because they don't have like that star power yet, which I feel like is a shame. I would love to see Rogue make it out of groups.
All right, so what's your final prediction for this group? Gigabyte Marines and Rogue?
My heart says Gammon Rogue, but I need to go with DRX and TAS. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with those two. All right, that's out of the way. Group D, where CFO is at. We've got the
best for last.
Exactly. Genji, the best team from the LCK's first seed, CFO, as well as 100 Thieves, the LCS second seed, and possibly RNG will slot into Group D if they make it out of play-ins. What do we think? The group draw, has it worked in favor of CFO or not? What are your thoughts?
I think this is the second best group that they could have been slotted into. The best one would have been Group C, in my opinion, because of the high volatility packed into that group. Group D is going to be a lot about laning, in my opinion. If you're stacking up against Genji, you need to be able to lane. I think CFO could do okay against that, but unfortunately, I don't think they stand quite at the same level as a Genji. So it really just boils down to, can we upset 100T and or RNG? It's possible we find one game against RNG. I think it's very possible we go 2-0 against 100 Thieves. It really just comes down to what adaptations are CFO able to make in the time sense, and how does the patch end up playing out? I think Worlds meta will certainly play a key factor, of course, throughout the entire tournament, but CFO, they do need some things to line up for them, and I think they're more of a patch dependent squad.
Yeah, I agree. I think that for CFO especially, the patch really helped them in their playoffs run. Do I think that they wouldn't have made it to Worlds on a different patch? Absolutely not. I think that CFO are the strongest team in the PCS regardless of the patch. It's just that the current patch for them was extremely good and just really showcased all of their strengths. I'm not sure Worlds, is it going to be a mid-mage meta that will favor mission? We're not sure, but I mean, the caliber of the players, as you mentioned, they are good laners. I don't think that toe-to-toe, pound for pound, they're going to be able to go up against Genji, but we don't need to beat Genji. We just need to be better than 100 Thieves and RNG. I think that traditionally, especially because PCS, in terms of region, we scrim the LPL teams so often. That's why historically you always see the PCS teams like Flash Wolves, like PSG go 1-1 versus teams such as RNG in the group stages. I think that it's not even that it's very possible. I would actually predict that they will go 1-1 versus RNG if they are in Group D. And 100 Thieves, the interesting thing is that I was watching a couple of interviews and the reactions from the 100T squad about the group draw, and for them, they think that Group D is actually the easiest group. And I think it was I can't remember who it was, but in the interview he was like, oh yeah, it's the easiest group, that see the Oyster team, yeah, we're better than them and we can beat them. And I was like, the Oyster team? Show some respect, man. But yeah, I just think that it's funny, how for 100T, for NA, they look at CFO and they're like, oh, we can beat PCS easy. And for us, we're like, okay, our best bet is to 2-0 100 Thieves to make it out of groups. Because if that shapes up right and you get 2 wins off of 100T, you go 1-1 versus RNG, and you're kind of hoping for a 3-3 situation at the end of the day, maybe play for the tiebreak and then be the second team who's 3-3 to make it out of groups along with Genji. I think that's what we're hoping for this year. I think that's their best chance, or like the most reasonable chance for us to make it out of groups.
Yeah, I think it's going to be some sort of tiebreak situation for CFO to make it out. I think it's very doable for them. It could even be, instead of a 3-3 tiebreak, it could be a 2-4 tiebreak, where Genji goes 6-0 and then everyone else kind of beats each other.
For scraps.
RNG,
yeah, RNG is gonna have to like seriously implode for that to happen. I think to 2-4, they're gonna have to lose once each to 100T and CFO. That would be wild, man. Chinese Reddit is gonna have a field day if that happens.
Yeah, I think this is going to be an interesting group to watch because of it might just be 3 teams fighting for second, or it could just be RNG coming out after the play-ins and really just carry on that play-in momentum and just hard stomping the group. That could very well be possible. It's going to be really fun to watch these bot lanes though, right? Because when you highlight each team, Genji, they have Ruler, RNG, they have Gala, CFO, we have Shun coming to his first international event. This will be a big test for him, because when you look at all of these teams, even 100T with FBI, it's really the bot lane and maybe a bit of the jungle to mix in as the highlight players of each team. So for CFO, thankfully, Shun, welcome to the party, buddy.
Oof, I mean, what a welcome, right? It's his first international event. It's also his very first year playing in a league such as the PCS. It's his first year going pro, and man's already on the world stage playing in New York City with this squad. I mean, it's gonna be a pretty good show to watch. I think CFO, they might not make it out of groups, but I think for sure they're not going to end 0-6. I think, like, it's a very PCS meme, right? That the PCS team ends up 0-6 at Worlds. So I don't think that will happen with this year's CFO. But I think the big question is really, do we think that CFO is better than all the previous PCS LMS teams in the past? Do we think that CFO is better than last year's PSG, for example, that had Maple and River on it, who still did not make it out of groups? Like, do we think that CFO is better than that level?
I think this group just needs perhaps a couple too many things to go their way to actually get out of the group.
Yeah.
So while I'm hopeful for CFO, I don't have them coming out of this particular group. I think it will be Genji and RNG, and it could very well be both of these teams coming in at 5-1. It's going to be tough, depending on RNG's form, for Genji to just clean sweep this group. So especially if it's going to be a Kai'Sa meta, and RNG, they have the premier Kai'Sa player in Gala.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it'll be Genji and RNG that make it out of Group D also. I mean, if you're just looking at seed placing, right? RNG, their LPL's 4th seed. But the thing is, RNG are just kind of that team, kind of like T1, kind of like EDG, where even though they narrowly make it to international competition, once they're at the international stage, like, they just like bankai and they level up just so hard once they're at the matches where it counts. And I feel like you just can't count out a team such as RNG. So yeah, I agree with you. I have RNG and Genji making it out of Group D too. I would love to see CFO make it out of Worlds, and I think that there's not a bad chance that it will happen. I think there's a reasonable chance it will happen. I just would I put money on it? I would put money that I'm willing to lose on it. Yeah, so like I believe in them. More than just
She's hopeful, guys.
What am I smoking? What am I on? No, I've just been rooting for CFO so hard. Look, CFO should have gone to MSI. I mean, like, fight me. CFO should have been the team instead of PSG that went to MSI this year. I mean, sure, PSG with Bay and Juhan did end top six ish, barely because of format for MSI. But I mean, CFO, they just missed out on international competition at MSI. They lost the spring finals like 2-3. It was really close. Also, I think that if CFO had gotten international experience in Busan during MSI, they would be better prepared coming into this Worlds. And I just can't have them making it out of groups.
There we go. All right.
I'm breaking down.
There we go.
I will gladly eat my words. If CFO make it out of Group D, there will be no one happier about that than me. But I have
absolutely.
to see it.
I will be purchasing CFO merchandise for sure if that happens. And even if they I will still be looking for CFO merchandise.
I don't know where we can get their merch. I mean, like, I'll just settle for eating oysters on my stream at this point. I'll just have like a whole tray of oysters as they're like playing their games. I don't know, man. Their logo's literally the flying oyster. I can't wait for casters to have to say flying oyster on stream either. But before we go, I think our final prediction, who do you have winning 2022 Worlds?
I think, this will be difficult because I feel like historically favorites have somewhat struggled to actually win the whole thing. So then our top two favorites would be Jingdong and Genji as the number one seeds from the LPL LCK. So I'm going to go ahead and predict RNG managed to come back from all the way in the play-in stage. And they will win this, win the whole thing, win the whole shebang. Oof. I think the extra play-in stage games, just getting that confidence up.
I actually think the reverse of that, which is, I think that's precisely my reason as to why I can't predict that JDG will win Worlds this year. I think that they had such an amazing, run coming into Worlds at the end of the LPL season that I feel as if this always goes one of two ways for teams. And I think that the Worlds format is just so long that I don't see JDG being able to have that continuous momentum for a whole nother month. And my prediction is the same as my prediction every single year that SKT win Worlds, because of course it's gonna be SKT winning Worlds. They have literal God on their squad playing in their mid lane. You don't bet a bit against God, that's just facts. Come on Frank.
Well, numerically they have won the most Worlds, so
exactly.
If you're looking at a percentage chance of an org, we'll give it to you. That said, I do think RNG definitely ready to make a very, very deep run, and maybe CFO, if they can make the dream run, I'm all in them.
Yo, wait, did we forget what broadcast we're on? Forget it. Forget what I said. BYG's winning, man. BYG is making it out of Mexico. They're going to New York. They're going all the way. They're having that redemption arc off of... No, so the thing is, right, because CFO, they're skipping Mexico and they made it straight to groups because they're first seed, right? So they're going to New York. However, BYG, if they make it out of play-ins, they get to go to both Mexico and New York. So they get to experience both places. If they make it out of groups into quarters, they get to go to even more places. It's actually
Atlanta.
Big brain. If you think about it that way. If you're BYG, if you're confident about making it to groups, exactly. What are CFO doing? They're still stuck back home, prepping all their instant milk tea, the instant rice to bring over to New York. Hey, don't laugh. This is what the teams do. You're gonna be in a foreign country for a month. You don't know what it's like.
Hey, at least we've got plenty of bubble tea, so the guys will be somewhat comfortable in that regard.
Yep. So, yeah, I guess that was it for our world's prediction video. I think that, we gave some reasonable insight. We weren't too high on the PCS hopium over here, but I think we're still kind of pretty hopeful. BYG have a good chance of making it out of play-ins into the group stages. CFO, do we think that they're the top 2 in the group? Not quite, but if they do make it out, it wouldn't really surprise us either way. And that's it, guys, for our 2022 World's prediction video. World starts very soon. I can't wait
Next week.
Exactly, a week, Mexico. I can't wait to not wash this jersey for a whole week and a half and cheer on BYG JK. I have 7 of these for every single day of the week. I am prepared. I am so prepared. I've been prepared since last year. BYG's prepared. I'm prepared. You better be prepared, Frank. But yep, we'll see all of you guys at Worlds. Bye bye.